Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this PSC webinar today. I'm going to wait a few minutes while we let some people trickle in. And we here are joining from Boulder, Colorado, it's a weirdly gorgeous day for February in Boulder, right on the Rocky Mountains. It's like I think it's going to be nearly 70 degrees, which is kind of crazy for us over here. So yeah, I know we'll be having people from all over the world joining us today. So welcome. All right, well, I'm going to dive right in. Today, at PSC, we talk about sustainability all the time, but today I'm especially excited because we're going to be giving the floor to a PSC member themselves to tell their own sustainability stories and the recommendations that they have for other pet businesses based on their real life lived experiences. So really excited to have Tanya Hart here of Augie Bones. She'll be exploring the market opportunity of sustainable business, what pet parents actually care about, and where the sustainability hotspots are in the pet industry. So you'll be hearing real life examples of brands making changes that both reduce impact and support growth. And you got to stay for the end because there will be a handy quick wins checklist that you can leave this webinar with at least one realistic action that you can take in the next 30 days. Shout out to the World Pet Association for sponsoring this webinar series. We appreciate you for making this possible. So in case you're new here to PSC, we are the sustainability partner for the pet industry. We help over 200 companies navigate their sustainability journeys. We provide guidance, tools, and community. My name's Alexandra Flynn. I'm the marketing manager here at PSC. I'm honored to work with a team of 10 passionate individuals working towards the vision of a sustainable future. We are based in Boulder, Colorado, as I said before, but of course, our coalition is worldwide and across the entire supply chain in the pet product space. So, whether you're a retailer, brand, distributor, supplier, you are all welcome here. As we all know, these issues cannot be resolved by one company alone. So, really important that we have everyone involved. Just a little bit about PSC before we get started. So we provide individualized support for companies, and we also tackle large collaborative industry-wide initiatives. So you'll often see us talking about and working on projects related to ingredients and packaging and responsible business. Just a few quick announcements. We have some really exciting events coming up here at PSC. These are open to members and non-members alike, so you are all welcome. We hope to see you at one or perhaps even all of these events. Our next webinar coming up is with our friends from Amplified Ingredients. It's going to be about regenerative agriculture and pet nutrition. It's going to be a really great webinar on February 24th. In late March, we have a couple events in Orlando, Florida. The Pet Summit will be co-located with the Global Pet Expo. So if you're going to be at Global Pet Expo, definitely encourage you to come a couple days early to attend this educational event. PSC will be hosting the sustainability track, which will be one of 7 tracks. It's going to be a really great time, and we do have a PSC member discount. So if you're interested in coming, please email us at membersupport@petsustainability.org. We'll get you your discount code for 15% off. At GPE on the show floor, we're going to have 2 different happy hours on March 25th and 26th at 4:30 p.m. It's going to be free, open, so definitely join us there. And then lastly, if you're going to be in Kansas City for Pet Food Forum, we will have our fan favorite axe throwing happy hour on April 28th. So definitely come join us there. You can learn more and register at petsustainability.org/events. And yeah, so definitely go there. RSVP for our events. We'd love to have you. A little bit of Zoom housekeeping. So you'll see 3 primary buttons at the bottom of your screen here. So you'll have the chat button. This is what you're going to use to say hello, introduce yourself. I encourage you to go in there now and just say hi, say where you're calling in from. There's the react button. That one, it's great to show some virtual support. So you can hit the heart button or the thumbs up or whatever you like there. It's always great to see. And then lastly, the Q&A. We will have a Q&A at the end. So if any questions come up, drop them there. You can also drop them at the end and we'll get to those. All right, so finally, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Tanya Hart. So Tanya has a long and impressive history in the wine industry. She's an innovator, a business developer, a marketer, a strategist, and today she's the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Titan Bioplastics, as well as the CEO and founder of Augie Bones Toy Company, which has been a PSC member for 3 years and counting. She spent more than 35 years building companies, launching brands, and bringing products to market. And she's really known for being able to take an idea from early concept all the way through production and scale. In 2018, Tanya co-founded Titan Bioplastics, which started as a concern about plastics in our environment and pet health, which quickly became a mission. Tanya shifted her decades of business experience into building a materials innovation company focused on recycled plastics, plant-based bioplastics, and advanced nano additive systems. So Tanya has really led Titan from the ground up and helped position it as an emerging global leader in biomaterial composites and nanotechnology additives. So among many accomplishments in 2020, the company was recognized by Stardust Insights as one of the top global companies to watch in nanotechnology and barrier properties for packaging. And they've been cited as an example of sustainability leadership from around the world. So really, really impressive stuff. In 2023, inspired by her 90-pound American staffy named Augie, Tanya launched Augie Bones, which is a plant-based dog toy company created to show what sustainable material can look like in real-world consumer products. And I gotta say, my dog has an Augie Bone, and she absolutely loves it. So just another reason to say that they're doing really great work over there. So with that, I'm gonna pass it over to Tanya. You can go ahead and share your screen, and I will jump off here.
Okay. Hello. Hope everyone's doing well. Thank you so much to Alex for that wonderful introduction, and also to PSC for having me here today. Thank you. And thank you to all of you for coming out this morning. I'm on the West Coast. I'm here in Seattle. And like Alex, we're having a fantastic winter, actually. I'm scared to say anything because we've had so much sun and very little rain. Anyway, so sustainability in the pet industry. So when I first got into the pet industry, it's very new for me. I really wanted to do something and lead by example and show people what was possible. And we started Augie Bones mainly because I didn't want Augie Bones chewing on a lot of the nylon and typical petroleum plastics. And as a team member with Titan Bioplastics, we realized it was possible. So Augie Bones was born. Um, Really, what we're going to go through today is focusing on what the industry is doing, how the demand for sustainability is growing and from a market context, what the competitive advantages of being a part of a sustainable program, pet parent demand, what they care about, what they pay for, the environmental paw print, if you will, for packaging and materials and pet food hotspots, the proof of feasible action, real options for market that make practical progress. And of course, I'm going to tell a little bit about the Augie Bones story. And I solicited Tyler Packaging as a packaging example as well for the pet industry. And then of course, Q&A afterwards at your leisure. So market and growth. Sustainability is definitely growing. I mean, it's mostly been gaslighting or greenwashing, I should say, not gaslighting, for several years now. But I think that has changed. You can't greenwash anymore. We know the industry as a pet industry is enormous. So this isn't just about toys or packaging. This is the global perspective of growth for the pet care market. And it's enormous. One of the reasons we went into Augie Bones was we saw that the pet industry and the children's toy industry, one of those industries that didn't fail to certain recession issues. So it was somewhat recession proof. It kept growing no matter what. So the global pet care market growth is at $259 to $324 billion in 2024. It's massive. And the forecasts for the next 10 years go to 425 billion to 600 billion. So you're almost doubling your potential growth in the pet care industry. So even with variations on methods of these numbers, there are small shifts towards sustainable products and packaging can result in a big differentiator that drives revenues. Excuse me. So sustainable, eco-friendly pet products are already tens of billions of dollars in the market. It's the brands are already starting to change over to different types of packaging, different types of products. The market reports place sustainable, eco-friendly pet products at 35 to 44 billion in 24, and expected to again almost double at 73 billion by 2034. So you can see the projected growth is going to be substantial. Retailers are increasingly expecting brands to show progress on sustainable packaging, sourcing, and operations. And that comes from not just the retailers as a demand, but more from the consumer. So the takeaway is we are a growth lever in sustainability and a filter for authenticity. So it's not just marketing copy anymore. So we did a little survey on before we started Augie Bones, and we thought, well, I didn't know how many people had dogs. I certainly didn't know that more than, there are more US households with pets than children. But 68 million and growing households in the US own a pet. Approximately 48 million of US households own a dog. And millennials and Gen Z make up 54% of pet owners. And again, apparently there are more US households with pets than children. I have two kids, so and pets, but I don't know that. Yeah, I know, right? I was surprised by that too. So sustainability is taking a winning market share. So buying data shows sustainably marketed products are growing. They're growing 2 times faster than typical marketed brands. They grow at double the speed. And 78% of consumers say sustainability matters when choosing what to buy. And 80% of consumers say they'll pay more for sustainable goods. Now, we all know what they say and what they do will be different, but for the most part, that's a very large number. So the takeaway today isn't just that sustainability is, a greenwashing sort of attitude of, yeah, we're sustainable, or we're not quite sure if it's a fad. It isn't just something that's nice to have. It does drive brand growth and it does incorporate building consumer trust. And this stat from PSC, 84% of pet parents hold companies responsible to address climate change. So this is a very large movement. So pet parents reward responsible brands. I know I do. I don't know about you, but if I go into pet stores, if I'm going into places, the first thing I'm going to see is, and maybe because I'm obviously tuned to it, and it's something that's become, more of a not just a lifestyle, but a life mission. We're an advocacy brand. We're always looking for ways in which to support sustainability. But pet shoppers in general, it appears, are more likely to expect action and to buy greener options. And I suppose part of that is when you think about the industry as a whole, you have, what goes into your dog's bodies. You're making every effort to buy that better food, those better ingredients. You want the health of your dog or your pet, and I'm using a dog obviously for personal reasons, but you want your pet to be the best version of itself it can possibly be. So 84% of pet companies, parents say companies should be held responsible to address climate change. 64% of pet parents were more likely to buy an environmentally friendly product in the past month versus 46% of non-pet parents. And 78% of pet parents are more likely to say people should be responsible for climate change versus 65% of not pet parents. Well, I mean, we can lecture all day long, but at the end of the day, what do you want that's best for your pet? So the takeaway is consumer priority metrics are really high. The easier you make the decision, the better it converts to sales and brand loyalty. And packaging is the most immediate proof point in the store and online and has the most general environmental impact. I mean, it's massive. 300 million pounds of pet food packaging goes into waste every year. Translate brand sustainability into concrete benefits to the consumer and health, safety, waste reduction, transparency. All of these are key indicators and key momentums for the consumer support and loyalty. So why sustainability sells? And we touched a little bit on that. And it reduces friction, buying friction, and increases loyalty. So it's a trust shortcut. And there are so many options out there in the pet industry. I was talking to a retailer in Florida and we were talking about Augie bones. And he says, yeah, we're selling Augie bones and they're doing great. But you have to realize that my store is huge and there are a million options for people to choose from. It's kind of overwhelming. It's sort of like people when I was in the wine industry. It's like, how do you pick a wine when there are 10,000 Chardonnays and 5,000 Cabernets? You don't know which one to go to. So you have to depend on trust. You have to find something that is that differentiator. And I think today, when you have such a competitive market, looking at ways to differentiate yourself and also drive your storytelling, not just from a fantasy standpoint, but from an actuality standpoint, has a massive impact. So customers want to trade up. They pay more when benefits are clear. Health and waste reduction. That's obviously health and waste reduction for both the pet and the planet. Customers choose brands that align with their values when price quality are comparable. Retailer confidence. Buyers look for brands that are ahead of packaging requirements and consumer questions. And sustainability plus performance increases repeat purchase and brand loyalty. And of course, ideally, if you are a differentiator, you want to create that story. Sustainability creates that marketing content that shoppers share and can actually activate in their stores. So where to focus first? So, there are four large levers in the industry that can move the needle and translate to sales. So the number one lever is packaging. I mean, packaging, as I said, 300 million pounds of pet food packaging a year go into waste. It's visible proof. It has an impact on ingredients and the quality of the ingredients, the freshness of ingredients. And if you can do sustainable packaging, then you're really creating a good end of life story. The goal is credible, not perfection, and progress. Pick a lever, make one measurable, make it an improvement to it, and communicate it clearly. Toys and general products. So this is a really large category, and packaging is massive, obviously, and this is also a large category. Obviously, toys, and I'll show you some stats where the toy market stands on its own. But we're talking about general products overall. That can be litter boxes. I'm reading from a little list here. Hang on. Litter boxes, pans, scoops, mats, liners, feeding and hydration bowls like slow feeders, treat dispensers, fountains, poop bags, dispensers, scoops, training pad trays, travel containment, kennel shells, crate pans, grooming tools, brush handles, food storage bins, treat containers, hardware, components. It's not just toys. When you think of everything that is made of plastic, what can you do to uh, create an alternative material? And your options are really based around two types. One is a recycled plastic. So instead of using a virgin plastic, use a recycled plastic instead. And if you're looking at something that's more plant-based, then use a plant-based bioplastic. So those are the two, plant-based bioplastics, recycled plastics. Whenever you're using a virgin plastic, you're essentially driving the need for more creation of plastic into the planet. So the idea is to recycle, reuse, or use a material that can have a life cycle that has an end of life into industrial composting or backyard. And then we have ingredients is the third lever, and then operations is your carbon footprint, which is always a little bit harder to manage, but Augie Bones has an A minus carbon footprint rating. So packaging waste, as I mentioned, it's 300 million pounds as an annual problem in the US pet industry alone of packaging waste goes into landfill. Flexible packaging is the largest pain point, but it's also the largest opportunity because there are companies now that are able to provide really good packaging that is much more sustainable. 90+% of flexible food, treat, and packaging lands curbside. That's a huge number. Many flexible pouches are multi-layered structures that are hard to recycle. So what that means is if you have something that has aluminum inside of it, it's going to be really difficult to recycle because you have an inseparable material that's layered that you can't turn back into a recycled plastic. This creates landfill, litter risk, growing retail consumer expectation for change, and the solutions include material redesign, mono-material structures, take-back programs, and recovery initiatives. But I think today there are so many options that you can use in packaging that it really is an area that you can look into that provides real solutions. And one of which is our friends at Tyler Packaging. So Tyler has done is create a real from start to finish option and proving it with the data and certifications of how their packaging is provides a better option for the pet industry. And I wanted to use Tyler as an example because it makes a difference. And I'll see if I can reduce this a little bit, but they do use recycled materials as well. Makes a difference to and the impact. I love the little reactions. They're so cool. Sorry, that's Augie in the background. So we all talked about how pet shoppers respond to sustainable packaging signals, and this is one of Tyler's innovative packaging pouches. We've learned with packaging 37% of pet owners are willing to pay more for sustainable recyclable packaging, and this is a US statistic. 18% of pet owners who say they currently purchase sustainable packaging. 24%, and that number can really be better, but I just don't think that a lot of companies are aware of their options. And I'm so sorry for Augie in the background. His nemesis goes by this time every day and walks by, and it's sort of one of those Tony situations. 24% of US pet owners reporting they buy pet foods with eco-friendly, eco-conscious packaging, which is up from 19% the prior year. So you can see the growth trend already. 76% in Europe consider product sustainability, and 69% say sustainable packaging is important. And I should point out that Europe is probably a couple of years ahead of us when it comes to sustainable priorities, sustainable mandates, sustainable growth. They are very much more conscious, and they accelerate those not just by a whim, but also based on mandates of the European Commission. The implication is packaging material upgrades are more likely to translate into growth when paired with clear, credible communication like recyclability and PCR content and third-party verification. These are big numbers, and the growth numbers are really showing. So let's talk about the toy market, which was the second largest pain point for recyclability and opportunity, or lever, as we said. So the global pet toy market size is expected to be worth, and these numbers astound me, they really do. Or even when we first started getting into the toy industry, my mind was like blown away by this. So the global pet toy market size is expected to be worth over 16 billion by 2030 from 8.8 billion in 2023. I mean, it grows. I mean, and you can see this by the number of pets, the number of new adoptions, the number of dogs. In Seattle, we're a huge dog state. 51.94% in 2023, the dog segment held that large segment of the dog market. It's 51%. It's massive. And at $4.6 billion annually. So the USA, that's the global number. In the USA, the pet toys market size is worth over 2 billion in 2023 and expected to reach 3.76 billion that's supposed to be 2030. That was an oopsie. Sorry about that. And in 2023, the USA dog market held the largest market share at 55% and over $1.18 billion annually. I mean, these are really big numbers just for dog toys alone. So what are some of I'm going into this a little bit. So what are some of the problems with the materials? Well, we know that over 90% of the dog chew toys in the pet market today are made from plastic, nylon, and rubber. And we know that nylon, plastic, and even rubber toys, when chewed, do cause harmful microplastics that are known to cause long-term health, cancer, and digestive issues for dogs. It's not just, one of those things that we say anymore. It's one of those things that's proven. Both of these are articles, which I'm happy to share. One talks about the testicular cancer that was reviewed for over a number of years in both male testicles and dog testicles, where they found microplastics 100% of the time in every single testicle. And this is a brilliant Earth Day release that goes into pets and plastics. And it's a very long report, but it's really, really interesting. So how does sourcing the right material work to transform your product into a plant-based bioplastic or recycled plastic? So they're out there. The most commonly used bioplastic today is PLA, which is polylactic acid, which has been converted from cornstarch cellulose. So it's a plant-based material. And to give you an example of PLA, when you go to the restaurants or fast food restaurants and you get those disposable single-use like knives and forks and spoons, and I think even some plates, those are all made from PLA, from polylactic acid. And it is biodegradable food grade material. Augie bones is mostly made from PLA as well. And it's become much more prevalent today as a resource and a commodity, whereas 5 years ago it was much harder to find. PLA is now prolific. And there are other materials like PHA, and there are a lot of up and coming new materials that you're going to see coming down the pipeline. So how do we make Augie bones? Well, as Alex said, I also am a co-founder in Titan Bioplastics, which is a sustainable polymer engineering company. So to explain sort of what that means, we're sort of the recipe that bakes the cake. Before you get the manufacturer gets its pellet, before anything else happens, you have to decide how your material needs to behave. Is it going to be a bowl? Is it going to be a cat litter box? What is that? What does that material, how does it need to function? And so Titan Bioplastics works with customers and say, okay, you can have a toy or a product you want to turn into a recycled plastic or into a bioplastic. We will make sure that that material functions in manufacturing. So there's no difference in the cycle. As I said, it doesn't just apply to toys. And as a supplier of those pellet materials, we have the capacity to produce 120,000 pounds of material for manufacturing a day. So there are companies out there that are able to adapt what might be a new material to replace what you currently are using. So what do you want to do if you've decided you want to make changes on the direction you want to go in? One of the things that is so important, especially when you're developing new materials and you are bringing out something that is not, not a material that everybody's using. It's not a virgin plastic. It's more a recycled or bioplastic. It's about communicating. It's about educating. You are constantly advocating and educating to not just the consumer, but to your retailers, to your distributors, and to all of your players in the industry. So 5 rules that keep your sustainability claims strong. You've got to be specific. What's changed? What are the packaging components? Use plain language. Replace jargon with shopper-friendly phrases and 10-second staff scripts. Quantify where possible. Use numbers of the percentage of recycled content, because maybe you don't want to use 100% recycled content and you're only using 50%. Show the proof, supply letters, certifications, test results, recognize standards, and be honest about your limits. So for Augie bones, for instance, we always talk the story. we say Augie Bones contains no nylon, no polyethylene, polypropylene, or any petroleum-based plastics. We went and had Augie Bones tested by KEMA, which is an international certification company, testing company. And we had the materials tested for 10-month-old babies. We wanted to have a non-toxic material that was tested safe for 10-month-old babies. All of the flavors we do are AFCO certified and hyperallergenic. And we talk about how the toys are industrially compostable. Augie bones are pretty thick and dense, so they won't decompose in a backyard or a compost bin. And we wanted to make sure everybody knew that we make all of our toys and get majority of our materials from the USA. So a structured starting point, a tracking system. Where do you start? Benchmarking makes sustainability measurable and not abstract. What it does, it evaluates performance across key areas like governance, environment, workers, community. It identifies hotspots and easy wins. It helps set priorities and track improvement over time for your product. And it creates a credible foundation for claims and retail conversations to the consumer. So you want to start by taking an assessment of what your business is. And if there is something in your business that you can say, okay, we can make changes to this and become part of the sustainability system. What are your first 1 and 2 priorities? And how do we implement it and track it? So choose one of the levers, which I showed you out of the 4 levers, make an improvement, communicate it clearly, and then repeat it. So pick your hero if packaging improvement is your sort of storyline where you want to go. Start with one SKU. When we started Augie Bones, we didn't know how these materials were going to perform. Augie tasted a lot of toys. He chewed a lot of toys. So I went with one-shot molds. I started with one-shot molds to try different sizes and to test the materials on a continual basis as we were adapting them to where they needed to be. Decide to transform one SKU into a sustainable material, recycle plastic or a plant-based bioplastic. Add proof in a staff script and activate it in store and online for 30 days to see how it does. And you're building a credible sustainability story that drives sales and builds loyalty. So here's where we get into the checklist. Product and materials and packaging. Run a quick packaging and product material exchange audit. Identify your highest volume SKU and its end-of-life reality. What happens at the end of that? Is it going into landfill or can it be recycled? Choose a packaging or material improvement. Remove unnecessary components, wraps, inserts. So with Augie Bones, we don't have any of that. We don't have the what do you call those things? The zip ties. We don't have plastic around our packaging. It's literally one piece that's recyclable, 100% recyclable. Increase recycled content or redesign a hero SKU. If looking at switching into a recycled plastic or bioplastic, look at cost, ease, material mechanics. I will say this in all transparency, you are going to pay more for a recycled plastic or a bio or plant-based plastic. It will cost you more. And there is no getting around that. There is a reason for that, for obvious reasons. The virgin plastics industry wants to keep things as competitive as possible, but that's going to change over time and volume. Clarify your claims, write one sentence shoppers understand, like recyclable where facilities exist or QRs for details. Credibility and activation, join or align with a program. Take PSC as your benchmark. Packaging, pledge, plastic recovery initiatives, collect proof, supplier letters, certifications, test results, measurable targets, create a retailer activation with your relationships, shelf talk, a back card, email, social posts. You'll see right here we have a back card on all of our point of sale. We talk about the fact that yes, we really are plastic and nylon free, no petroleum plastics. And yes, this is how the toys chew and they're safe and non-toxic. And of course, training and education is always going to be huge on your list because you're you're growing. This is a new part of industry. You're taking those assessments, you're taking those risks, and you're being a leader in those types of programs. And that's it. And that's Augie. That's my Augie boy, Augie Heart. Thank you so much for listening. You're on mute, Alex.
Oh, thank you. I was just cheering and clapping on behalf of the whole audience. Lovely presentation. You did such a great job. Yeah, there's a lot of great lessons here. I loved how you framed the importance of trust and how sustainability communication is really critical and how it can kind of be a shortcut to consumer trust. That was a really cool way you worded that. I never thought about it in exactly those terms. With consumers getting so fine-tuned to greenwashing, like clear and responsible communication is getting so critical. So I thought there was a lot of really great lessons there. Another one of my main takeaways is that sustainability truly is a journey, focusing on one action at a time. It can be a really great way to get started without getting overwhelmed. So I hope everyone listening out there today, I hope you have some new ideas. And if you want to continue the conversation with Tanya, please reach out to her. And of course, please keep us here at PSC posted on your progress. And of course, if you need help, lucky for you, that's exactly what we do here at PSC. We can help you every step of the way. We're going to dive into Q&A here. We have a couple questions queued up here from the audience. So this first one here is about PLA, and with mixed reviews that PLA can still contain some toxic chemicals in order to behave like plastic. How can we know that it's not toxic to the environment? And is there a certain way that we can address or promote this in the industry?
That's a good question. And I think that there was a push for a while that PLA was somewhat like maybe an arbitrary material. And we've in the industry, we've kind of looked at that from many different directions. But the bottom line is PLA is safe. I don't know that those were all credible claims at the time. But we work with two companies for our supply chain, and we make sure that the PLA that we get has all the right certifications behind it for its end of life and its toxicity, especially for if we're producing it for a toy that will go into a dog's mouth. And it was really important to us when we were working with our supplier to say, hey, this is what we're going to be using the materials for. This is the standard that we need to reach, and we want to make sure that this is tested exactly as it says it is. And that's what we did.
I love that. Another question we got here is, so how will European or ESG goals affect the industry and commerce? Do you have any predictions on that?
Well, like I mentioned, Europe is probably ahead of us by a couple of years when it comes to ESG goals. ESG goals, the very word goals kind of takes away mandate. It becomes a more like a desire to do something rather than an imperative to do something. And so I think that individually you have to decide whether you're a thought or an imperative. From Augie Bone's standpoint, based on our experience with Titan Bioplastics, we wanted to make this an imperative. We wanted to lead industry and say, here's what's possible. And we're not the only ones, but we're, and the hats off to those who take that risk and to drive something that's disruptive into a huge, massive industry. So I think that, the European Commission has set a lot of goals and standards by the year 2030 of what we are supposed to be doing from a sustainability standpoint. Some of those things shift in the US. That's a moving target on where that needs to be. And I don't mean to word salad here, but I think that overall, I think you have to just decide whether or not you're going to be a part of the imperative or decide whether or not you're going to ignore it.
Well said. Well said. We have another great question here from Rosemarie. So she asked, at one time, it was commonly held that PLA needs to have a petroleum element for flexibility. Is this AI search result true?
No.
Simple answer.
It is a very brittle material, but that, as a polymer engineering company, one of the things we had to do when we developed, Augie bones was we wanted to have a chew factor as opposed to just make it too brittle. And we wanted the dog's teeth to be safe. So engineering PLA is a feat. So PLA by itself is very brittle and hard, and it doesn't, it's not going to be very flexible. But you can blend it with other sustainable material, food grade materials to get the right, what we call mechanical properties, to work for whatever it is you're looking for. PLA, and I'll go into PLA a little bit. PLA, I remember, I'll tell a story. In 2019, my partner David and I went to the K Plastics show. And this was just when, Titan was really getting going, and we saw the bioplastics industry and the plant-based plastics really growing, and what was going to happen in there, and the imperatives coming from the European Commission. And when we got there, some of the largest companies that make PLA in the world said, we're not selling any more PLA. We're in a moratorium. The demand for PLA is greater than the supply chain. So we're going to spend, $500 million for per plant, and we're going to build multiple plants. And this wasn't just from them. This was from all of the global producers of PLA. We're going to build new plants. We're going to work hard to meet the demand of PLA. Well, that was back in 2019. So the price of PLA shot through the roof, and now you're seeing it prolifically. It is a global commodity. As I said, is it something that you're going to see price equivalencies to virgin plastic? No. But virgin plastics are being taxed more now in each country, especially in the EU, than they ever have been. So I would say that, when it comes to the materials, they are more prolifically available than they used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like a very quickly changing arena here. So
Yeah.
that's great. We did get a lot of questions about will the presentation be available afterwards? And yes, we will send out the recording to all the attendees here after, so you can access that. Another question we have here is, do you have any advice for mistakes? Like what mistakes should companies avoid early on their journey here?
I think you want to make mistakes. I mean, we made a lot of mistakes when we started out. Like I said, we built the one-shot mold. So the one thing I would do is don't go in and build multi-cavity molds unless you already own them. And then you have the testing opportunity. But I would say don't spend the money on multi-cavity molds immediately. Do it as a one-shot mold. That way you can test iterations of your materials as you go along to make sure that they are where they need to be. And I would say, a lot of innovation is trial and error. And so you need to go through and make those mistakes. I would also say build larger multi-cavity molds than smaller multi-cavity molds. You'll be thankful down the road that you have that cost iteration for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great answer. We have another question here. Audience question is, why do you think consumers value or pay attention to sustainable packaging so much over perhaps ingredients?
Do you think they pay more attention to the packaging than the ingredients? I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I know there's two things I look at when I go to a store to buy something for Augie. I'm going to look at I know what I'm going for, first of all. I'm going to see what all my options are. Then I'm going to see what's going to be best for him. I'm not going to buy that because it has something. I'm going to look at the ingredients. The fact that it's in a recycled packaging is going to be a value added bonus to me that I would pick over something that isn't. So I don't know
Mhm.
that it's more important. I think it's a very important factor. I think it's a growth factor for the industry. I think it's a point of reference that adds value to a brand with the ingredient alongside the
Mhm.
ingredients. I don't think it has to be an either or.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's the thing that the consumers are actually holding in their hands first. So it
Yeah, you're
seems
looking
like
at you're going, oh, and me, I'm squinting, but
totally,
you're like, okay, it has this, 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 it doesn't have that, and it's in a recycled package sold.
totally. It's kind of the first impressions
Yeah,
concept,
yeah.
but awesome. Do you have any advice on brands, what kind of questions they should be asking their material suppliers if they're looking for a new partnership?
Well, I think it depends on what your goals are, first of
Mhm.
all. For your brand, for Augie Bones, we wanted to touch all of those points. We wanted to make sure that the product itself was going to be safe for dogs. We wanted to make sure our packaging was going to be recyclable. So I say go to your suppliers and say, what parts of this can I touch? Is it 50%? Is it 75? Is it 100%? What are your ultimate goals? Do you want to be 100% sustainable? Do you want to maybe make the packaging sustainable, or you don't want to change something else as part of your product? If you're going for a cat litter box, I always use that as an example because it's very simple. It's an injection molded product. Maybe it's as simple as saying to your supplier, I want to use recycled plastics. Well, there is a ton of recycled plastic out there. You don't need a food grade recycled plastic for a cat litter box. So that would be more cost efficient. So you want to compare prices and make sure that your cost per pound are going to be within your manufacturing cost efficiencies, and B, what kind of grades of material you need to use depending on the use of the material at the end of that into what product you're manufacturing.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of like what I'm getting and what I've learned about sustainability. I'm fairly new to sustainability, only been in it for about a year, but it's always really interesting to me that there's not really like a one size fits all for companies. So yeah, I think it's really important, like as you said, Tanya, to really identify like what your specific goals are. Where's your first step? It might be different from one company to the next. So I think that's all really great advice. Tanya, is there any last things or takeaways that you really want the audience to come out of this webinar with?
I guess the one thing I would say is it seems daunting. Like choosing that bottle of wine where you want something, you don't know what to spend, you don't know what varietal, you don't know if you know how it's going to taste. And there are so many choices. And at the same time, you're not sure which direction to take first. So I would say the first step is just asking questions and starting to talk and not to be afraid. And I don't use it as a scare perspective, but you know, diving in and taking those chances is the first step, and
Mhm.
not looking at it as so overwhelming. There are four levers. Look at it as the four levers. Where do you fit into those four levers of sustainability? Is starting with one SKU doable? Is trying to adapt a material to what you want to use? If you don't want to spend the money um, engineering a bioplastic from scratch for what you need it for, start with a recycled plastic. If it's not going in something's mouth, if your dog's not chewing it and it's something else, start with a recycled plastic. Start somewhere, and you'll find that once you start and you go down the road, it becomes a lot easier. The first step is always the hardest.
Mhm. I love that. We did get a couple last minute questions in right now. If we have a few extra minutes to answer these ones. The first one is, what action or benchmark do you think creates the most competitive advantage?
I'm sorry, what actual benchmark?
What action or benchmark do you
What
think creates the
action?
most competitive advantage?
Um, I think, well, when it comes to sustainability, I think the first thing, if it's not, a material that's going to go into a dog or a cat's mouth, start with a recycled plastic. Start converting some of your materials into recycled plastics. It's
Mhm.
not hard to do. Today, recycled plastics are extremely sophisticated and abundantly available. And, that is an easy, quick way to benchmark how you can make changes. If it is something that is going into an animal's mouth, then I would say look at a bioplastic, a plant-based material.
Mhm. All right. And here's the last question. And if anyone has any other questions, feel free to send us an email and we can start a conversation there. But last question here. So an anonymous attendee said that they recently introduced recycled packaging across their line, but they received some pushback from their major market players. They say the manufacturer should bear the cost. Are there any recommendations that you have to combat these issues? Because it seems like they are feeling some mixed signals coming from the consumers and retailers on sustainable packaging. What advice would you have for them?
Oh, wow. I think, whenever you are innovating and disruptive, you're always going to get pushback. And cost obviously, forms part of the factor in there. So you have to move your costs all the way down the line. It's hard, but now you have some data that kind of backs up what you're doing with recycled packaging. So I would maybe take that to the pushback. I use data all the time and statistics because we have to. We can't just say, try this, it's sustainable. Well, what makes this different? And are the consumer really, interested in it? Well, we know from statistics that they are. So I would use those whenever possible. I think that you're not a minority, as much a minority anymore using recyclable packaging as it used to be. The pet industry has been a little behind where some other industries are a little bit more forward, but it's changing and it's changing very fast as we showed today. So I think it's about education.
Mhm.
I think that's key. It's about educating. And I'm always surprised when I hear there's pushback against a sustainable package. Um, but you never know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the trends that you want to get ahead of. So,
Well, have courage of your convictions.
yeah.
I think that whoever does this, and not just Augie Bones, but all those that are making those efforts to either create like recycled packaging and as part of their brand, you're advocating for something that's bigger than what the majority does. And I think you have to have the courage of your convictions and educate along the way and know that you are on the winning side eventually.
I love that. Well, Tanya, this was a great conversation. We got some awesome audience questions. So thank you everyone for dropping those in there and starting some really great conversation. Thank you, Tanya. If you enjoyed this webinar, don't miss the next one. We have one coming up with amplified ingredients on February 24th, and you can register for that to either attend live or you will receive the recording if you register. So just go to our website, petsustainability.org, and register there. But anyway, thank you everyone so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy. Hopefully, it's nice weather where you are too.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for everyone that came today. I really appreciate it. And I'll be at Global Pet Expo with the Pet Sustainability Coalition as well, doing a similar presentation. So if you have questions, please find me. I'm happy to talk to you anytime or reach out to me.
All right. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Alex.
Thank you.
Take care.